Hey, what's going, y'all? It is yours truly once again. Welcome back into the range of the lone wolf. A side note is that some solitary creatures do have territories, but with the lone wolf is different because the lone wolf is in and out of packs. So it doesn't necessarily need a territory. It just has a range. And so to me, this represents an animal that has developed a greater sense of hypersensitivity in forms of echolocation via its howl and things like that so that it knows where to go and where not to go. Whereas if you had a territory as a solitary creature, you're going to fight those who try to get in your territory because they're going where they shouldn't go. And you'll end up running into those other territories yourself and having to go through the same thing. A lone wolf doesn't have this issue because a lone wolf just instinctively knows where to go and where not to go. It doesn't need to let out his urine glands and things like that. But that's a side note. Um, but yeah, welcome back into my range. And I hope that everybody that has been a lone wolf has been trotting well. Um, okay, check this out. I did a previous video that talked about being hurt versus wild. Okay, yeah, I did a video talking about being hurt versus being wild. And this one in talking about being tamed versus being domesticated. It really brings up a social dynamic that I really think reflects a lot of us living in this human experience because for those who see themselves on a certain level, and not even level, but maybe echelon, you just see yourself as a spiritual being living out this human experience, right? Now, wolves, it's so amazing because with wolf culture is very similar to human culture. That's why a lot of people do a lot of narratives, a lot of analogies, a lot of philosophies based off wolf culture. So let's check this out. To be tame, let's say, yes, you are an enigmatic individual. No, this has nothing to do with someone that calls themselves a sigma. Someone that's enigmatic is on a different frequency altogether. Um, Someone that was truly an enigma, not a sigma. But you operate at this idea in this mind frame that you've always been wild. So to be tamed, more or less, is just to come into contact with ordinary people within this matrix, per se. And you just become their friends. You become very comforted in being around them. You have essences, if you will, of who you are, and but you're very limited as to what you should and shouldn't do because you're now tamed, right? You're now tamed. So the thing between the tame, the difference between the tame and the domesticated is when your limitations gets even more thought out, if you will. You start to become more catering to their narrative and their agenda. Those type of people you run into. This same thing occurred with those who call themselves Native Americans or who have been called Native Americans. Let's put it that way because, yeah, they don't like to be called Native Americans. And yours truly has ancestry with that as well. So, but let's just, in this general perspective, let's just say, yes, with Native Americans, this happened to them. They were once a wild people. They ended up getting around outsiders. Some of them became tame because you still had your sense of wildness and your sense of culture, but you weren't truly thriving and living the way you were living because you're now in contact with these people. You don't want to have any conflict, right? That's part of being tamed. So the domestication occurred when Native Americans ended up assimilated. So, they ended up basically reconstructed to fit the other narratives and agendas of the outsiders that they ran into. And this occurs with wolves, right? How did they become man's best friend? How did they become domesticated? Well, this is because some, not all, some wolves ended up domesticated. So this tells you that um, the whole idea of still remaining as a lone wolf is to not be like some of the other wolves that were out there. And who's to say that these wolves that became domesticated were actually lone wolves? You know, the whole idea of the lone wolf is actually kind of overrated. But it's funny that I use that term, ironically. But it's not in a bad way that I say that. And I'll talk about this whole idea of what it means to be a lone wolf as time goes on. Um, but yeah, to be domesticated is to finally be, you finally were made to be fit into someone's narrative. And I saw a video about this not too long ago that best represents what I'm trying to say. To be tamed means that you were put into a circus, and to be domesticated means that you were put into a farm. You know, you look back on history, you see that yes, it's just nothing but wild animals that are in a circus. They weren't able to be trickled down any further than that because, you know, beyond their wildness, or beyond their tameness, if you will, there was no further use of them beyond that. You know, you have to keep them a certain way because beyond that, you had no more use for them. But if you put a certain animal in a farming situation, you get an animal to be domesticated because you can further develop this animal from its once wild state to fit your narrative. And so with people, it's the same way. Someone that's truly a lone wolf does not desire to be tamed nor domesticated. You stay away from people that try to change your state of mind to ultimately fit their narrative to where you are never the core you that you once were. So this is always something to keep in mind for those who know that they are lone wolves. And of course, I keep at times making that Sigma contrast within these videos because I want people to see that from my experience that lone wolf and Sigma are not the same. So as I said before about Sigma, Sigma is feral. It was never wild. It at one point was domesticated. That's the thing about something that's feral or slash Sigma. It was an individual that once was in society and they got pushed out of society, just as an animal that was once domesticated was pushed out of a farm or pushed out of a household. Um, so you have that going on. So um, the thing with feral animals, they just try to find their way. Some of them try to find their ways back into those same societies that kicked them out, or they find a way to develop their own society. That's the thing about someone or an animal that has a feral state of mind, aka Sigma. But just continuing on with what I have to say about the lone wolf, we just want to remain wild. And in the future, I'll talk about how to avoid the traps, you know, because you have to avoid the traps that are out there in the wilderness. You know, they want to trap you and bring you back into their civilization. Signing out.